Welcome to the year 2020. Today we have to do a contact session on the ACSE, Geography as a school subject itself. It's what we have to present first before we go to Geography number 2. So students, you should know the following things. Whenever you have to prepare for your examination, your assignment, make sure that you follow instruction so that you can be able to gain marks. So, for example, if a question asks you to differentiate, at least you must use the comparison words, like the but, instead, while, less. Simple because you like to use the and it's going to make you lose the marks. Because and is a conjunction word, it's not a comparison word. If you are asked to write an essay form, for example, make sure again that your answer will not on bullet points, but on a paragraph form, that you need to introduce a fact, then you discuss it below. You introduce the fact first, then you introduce it below. Right, topics under assessment. It's not all of the topic, but I put most of the crucial topic that is being touched, and you must at least prepare them for either April or August or November examination. In some of our papers, there are research part. A research part that usually either based on the human geography or on the physical geography topic. For example, the topic that you need to pay attention to for the human geography is the traffic count, the pedestrian count, environmental quality, and the urban land survey. Physical geography, this time around at least we should concentrate on the weather studies. The river or the beach study, this one is not our main concern this time around. So which means that here you can acquaint yourself with either the NANCOL booklet, then you look for those topics for paper 3, for example, because research is part of paper 3 in grade 12, for example, so that you can see how questions are being answered there. On top of that, if you have to prepare for the research part, make sure that you must know the sampling methods, the methods that can be used to correct information for a geographical project. Those methods, you have to know the advantage of why people have to use them, as well as the disadvantage of not selecting the others. Some of the topics that you could look at is, for example, the plate tectonics, whereby you must study and understand things like the environmental activity, like the volcanoes and the earthquakes. You know the positive and the effect of it, as well as positive and the negative effect of it, as well as why some areas are being affected more to these phenomena than other areas, which means that you have to study basing your information on the less economic developed country like Namibia, as well as the major economic developed country like country in the United States of America. So at the same time, you need to look at the environmental at risk, things that we humans have to practice in an environment, and they put our environment in danger. You look at the phenomena like the deforestation, desertification, global warming, and the acid rain. This at the end of the year, at the end of the time, they might contribute to the effect of either drought or floods. Again, you need to look at the energy resources. This topic, you really need to study and understand it very well, because you need to know the energy that you have to group as the renewable sources of energy and the non-renewable sources of energy. The advantage and the disadvantage of using either a renewable sources of energy and a non-renewable sources of energy. You must also study and understand what is meant by renewable and by non-renewable. You can also look at the energy that we have to use. Look how they impact or how they affect our environment, this use of energy. Either could be on people and on natural environment. Sometimes you will find a question that you have to ask you the impact of energy use or any phenomena on people and on natural environment, which means that here you need to mention points on natural and the points on people. If we just ask you on people, then make sure that you concentrate on people only. And if you ask you on natural environment only, make sure that you concentrate on natural environment only, because mixing both will not going to benefit you any marks if you happen just to ask you one of the two. Another topic that you could critical analyze is the coastal process, whereby I want you to look at the distribution of different features. For example, features like the formation might be of dunes, where to find them, the coral reef, where to find them, and the condition that needed for the development of these features. All these features, if you look at them, they have to do with the coastal process or the marine process. That is how other books have to analyze this topic. And then once you look at it, you find the formation of dunes, even it is not in wind process, but as a part of coastal process. And you find also the landforms that came around, but around the coastal area, as the process of coastal process take place either through erosion or through depositional process. So therefore, those are the things that you have to be taking care of. We continue. We come to the topic of urbanization. First of all, what you need to understand is the meaning of the terminology urbanization. Most of the time, most students have to confuse urbanization with migration. So to make it clear, urbanization is not actually a movement of people from one town or from one place to another, but this is an increase in the proportional number of people that are living in urban area. That is what we call an urbanization. When this population grow in urban area, and then now this urban area can no longer provide, or they put on pressure to provide for the population in those towns or cities, then we have to call process that is an urbanization. Therefore, is a proportional increase of the people that are moving to urban areas. And these people usually, they can either move now through the process of migration, either from rural to urban area or from urban to urban, meaning that from one town to another town, from village to town. Therefore, again, we need now to look at, when you study it, you cannot just leave it there. Understand the reason why people leave the rural areas and they're coming to urban areas. You can also look at the impact it will going to leave on the place where people are moving. What problem does it going to live there? How it's going to benefit where the people are going, for example, and how it have to might put pressure to a place where people are moving to. For example, in urban areas, you will find that people put pressure on demanding on services like the provision of water and electricities, provision of houses is a good example and a phenomenon that prevail in Namibia so far. At the same time, as they move, they come with a certain problem. Therefore, we need to look at the solution, or you need to know and understand the solution of what should be done now to reduce the problem of rural-urban migration. What should we do? What programs, for example, that need to be introduced to rural area so that we can keep the people at the rural area there and do whatever that is supposed to be done at urban area so that we can prevent them from moving and putting the services at urban area on pressure. Make sure that you read and understand that as well. At the same time, in order for you to analyze the problems, you must understand the push and the pull factors of migration. Why do the people have to move? What attracted them to move to urban area? And what forces them to leave the rural area, for example? Once you understand the push and the pull factor, the attracting factor and the unattractive factors, it's only when you will able to come up with a solution, simple because you need to take the solution to solve the problem that is being created there. Then we come to the agriculture part, the farming system. Remember that we also having the industrial system, but here, this time around, let's look at agriculture. Farming system, whereby you need to understand the different types of farming. For example, the commercial farming and the subsistence farming. Understand the differences between two, which one is meant for the profit and which one is meant for the family consumption. There is also other, like the extensive farming, which one between commercial and the subsistence are fitting on the external farming, for example. Then you can also understand the process that are being involved in farming. Because, for example, we have this question based on case study, whereby we have to ask questions like, for a named area that you study, describe the process of a farming system that you study, which means that now you need to describe, you need to identify a place, you have to identify a type of farming, then you come to the input. What are the inputs? For example, could be land. Then from there you come to the process. What do people do with their land? If a person is farming with plants, for example, this person needed to, on the process, the person needed to till the land or cultivate the land. Then in the output, the person could have the seeds of the next year or the agriculture wastes that can be used for something else. So at the end again, a farmer, like the one who is farming for profit, can have a profit at the end of the day. And for a subsistence farmers, it's food for the family, for example. So therefore we group the process, like we place it in input, what you are putting in. We put it on the process, what you have to do to come to the final product, and the output, what are you taking out of it. Right? Then we come to topic population. When we come to the topic population, we have a topic population that have to concentrate on the population density or population distribution. But this time around, let us look at the population that have to do with the population dynamics, that have to do with the growth of the population in the world. Which means that in this case here, we need to look at the reasons, or you need to study and understand the reasons for high or the low population growth in either a less economic developed country, find the reason why the population there is high or why it is low, and again the reason for a high population growth rate either in a major economic developed country, and at the same time for you to come across with those reasons, it means that you have to look at the reasons that increase the birth rates, reasons of that lowers the birth rate, or increase the death rate and lowers the death rate. And again, we look at an important factor. Nowadays, we are having a population that we have to call an aging population, the gray population. This gray population is becoming now, this population is now increasing in the world. Find out the reason why the aging population is increasing in the world, or the world population aging is increasing. Find the reason. And they also come up or look at the problem that if a country is having an aging population, what the problem that country have to face. For example, a good example one can put here, apart from them putting the government on pressure for paying out their pension for medical and the others, these aging people, they cannot defend a country, for example, in case of war. These are some of the problems associated with the aging population. But now we want to know what is boosting this population to grow more than it is expected or more than before. Understand those reasons. Whenever we have to do either assignment, write your examination, come and understand this topic carefully. And again, at the same time, look at the case study that are based on the population policy. This population policy is either to reduce the population or to increase the population. For example, China is having a one-child policy that emphasizes on lowering the population growth, whereby couples are encouraged to have at least one child. That's why it's called the one-child policy. Therefore, it have to say it's a population policy that is aimed to reduce the population. Therefore, you need to go to the case study of a China one-child policy. I know it's also on your study guide. Study it and look at the benefit. Look at what is being stipulated on that policy, what people will lose and what will they gain if they have to abide to the policy. The Singapore and the France one, for example, is to increase the population, because they have to say you could get 3 or more if you can afford them. Read the benefit there. Again, as well as what will happen to you if you are not adhere to the policy. Let me say now you have one child, or you are expected to have 4 or 5. What will happen now? Are you going to support that child yourself, or is it the government? If you were used to have the benefit, for example, in China, for having one child, then they become 2. What will happen to those benefits? Will the government going to remove it, or what will happen? Those are the things that you have to look at. It's very important for us to understand and study the case studies, because most of that question usually can have to ask you to name a specific area and they describe what happened to this and that. These are the case studies we are talking about. Therefore, you need to study and understand them. Could be in a population like that, could be in a natural hazard like that, and the many more could be on economic activity. Now, another topic that we have to look at is the Human Development Index, or the indicator. The index that have to be used so that people can able now to say, is this a developing country or is it a developed country? You need now to read and understand this topic, understand what is a GNP all about, what does it stand for, and what does it mean. What does GDP stand for? Health of that country, how does we can measure the development of the country using health, education, or maybe the enrollment of learners in school, and the other more. Usually, this Human Development Index, when you look in a lot of geography books, is not really well covered. But question that they have to take from there, they usually have to ask a question in depth. Therefore, I have to urge you to consult the development study booklet, more specifically those one at NANGO, and this topic are well explained there, where you will able to understand them well. So now, we can also look at the natural vegetation. When we have to look at the natural vegetation, actually, is that topic that is having the rainforest, the desert, the temperature region of the world. So once we have to study it, be able to be associated the vegetation with the climate. For example, the desert climate, know what it entails. Know the adaptation of either animals or vegetation. How do they adapt to the climate of the desert? So does the tropical rainforest, for example. And again, at the same time, you must also know the human activity that is taking place in either the desert area or any other natural vegetation. Because this human activity actually, they put this natural vegetation in danger. That is why you will find deforestation is taking place. For example, why do deforestation have to take place at the Amazon? Amazon is an area in a tropical rainforest. Why mining have to take place at in the Namib Desert? And how does this impact on the natural environment and on the local people itself? So another thing that we need to look at is map work. Which means that when I have to put a question like this, it means that in either one of your paper, you might find a question in research, you might find also a question in map work, whereby you need to understand the characteristics of map, like the title of the map is for which area, the key that is being used there, so that they can be able to guide you to answer questions that are based on map work. Simple, because I have to say this is the part of map work. Every question there is based on the map that is in front of you. And always make sure that you are provided with a map. If you come across with a map work in your examination on your assignment, make sure that you are provided. And it should be at least printed on A3 paper in color as well. With it, you can able to look at the direction as well as the different scales of the map. You can able to, with the scale of the map, you can able to calculate different distance in the map, direction of one area to another. So those are most important things there. And the other thing is you have to study the map work. Please do know how to calculate the gradient, how steeper the area is, for example. So if you came across with it and you do not understand how to go about it, you can always call me so that I can able to tell you how to go about it. Another thing is the types of weathering and their process. Remember, weathering is not weather, but weathering. This process is now those physical weathering, biological, and the chemical one. Usually they are just three, and their process means that you need to know the meaning of the term weathering itself, the meaning of those many types of weathering, the process that is taking place under each weathering. And when I have to say process of the types of weathering, for example, if I have to take physical weathering, we have a process called exfoliation that is taking place, for example, in the Namib Desert. Make sure that you understand how this process takes place so that they can form different landform on the land that you have to see today or elsewhere in the world. So which means that you have to understand that topic of weathering very well, And make sure again when you find it either in a photograph, a figure in front of you, be able to identify which type of process and it fall under which type of weathering. So that is what you need to look at. So far, which means that in short, I have to cover what you're supposed to cover or to prepare for both of your examinations for April, November, and December. November, August, and April. But make sure you are not only limited to those topics. Take some of the topic also that having certain information that might help you to understand the other topics. And make sure that you study in depth and you understand what is really going on there. Therefore, again here, you are expected to read extensively. And you must make use, for example, of grade 10 and the grade 12 NANCOL booklets. Make use of your study guide that is provided by IOL, because it covers all the topics there. Because even when I have to set now, I have to follow that study guide, but I need you to use the NANCOL booklet to see how people can able to answer those type of questions. Another resources that you can use is a Longman Geography for GCSE, or another again by the New Wider Worldwide Geography. Both of them are the author was David Wall. Development Study Grade 12 NANCOL booklet. Do not forget that one, because they have to explain in more detail about the human index, the index that we have to use to measure the development of a certain country. So this takes us to the end of our session of geography as a school subject that we call Geography 1 or 11. So good luck with the preparation of 8th assignment, preparation of your examination. Whenever you stuck on whatever that you have to do, you can always call me between 5 and 8. I'll be available to answer for your questions.